The evening sun hung low over New York City, painting the skyline in soft gold as it slipped behind towering buildings. The market on 34th Street buzzed with life, vendors shouting their final calls, street musicians strumming guitars, neon signs flickering awake as dusk settled like a gentle curtain. Keanu Reeves moved quietly through the crowd, hood up, cap low, doing everything he could to remain unseen. For him, these rare walks among everyday people were a treasured escape from fame, noise, and cameras. Tonight felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. He paused at a small tea stall where steam curled into the cool air. The vendor, unaware of the world-famous man before him, smiled warmly and handed Keanu a cup of hot mint tea. Keanu thanked him with a nod. There was something comforting about being just another face in the city. No interviews, no photographers, no expectations. He inhaled the aroma of the tea, letting the warmth settle into his hands as he continued walking. Every corner echoed with the sounds of life. Sizzling food, laughter, sirens in the distance, taxi horns fighting for dominance. But beneath the vibrant glow of the market, something darker lurked. Unmarked black SUVs coasted slowly along the edge of the street. Inside, agents watched Keanu's every step through high-resolution screens, zooming in on his movements with military precision. Their voices crackled through earpieces, exchanging codes and confirmations. The city believed it was another normal evening. But for this covert task team, the operation was reaching its climax. A woman stepped out of the lead SUV, Detective Marlowe. Her presence commanded authority instantly. Tall, firm posture, eyes sharp with experience. Her uniform, crisp beneath the flashing red and blue reflections of nearby patrol cars. She had spent weeks on this case, chasing fragments of evidence that pointed to a dangerous digital criminal. A man responsible for a massive data breach that cost the city millions and endangered thousands. And the face tied to that crime matched Keanu's exactly. As Keanu moved deeper into the market, the atmosphere subtly shifted. Conversations hushed, footsteps slowed. Something felt off. He sensed tension weaving through the air, like a pressure building before a storm. His instincts, finely honed from both real life and years of performing dangerous roles, whispered a warning. He turned his head slightly. That's when he saw them, officers emerging from between food stalls, tactical units approaching from both ends of the market, the crowd beginning to notice the sudden police presence, phones rising in confusion and excitement. Keanu's heartbeat quickened, not in fear but in disbelief. What was happening? Detective Marlowe stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. Keanu Reeves! Hands where I can see them! Long before the arrest in the market, long before Detective Marlowe shouted his name, Keanu Reeves had already become the center of an invisible storm. It began in a cold, dimly lit command room deep beneath an NYPD intelligence facility, a place the public didn't know existed. Rows of surveillance screens glowed in the darkness, illuminating the stern faces of federal analysts who had been tracking a ghost, a cybercriminal known only as Spectre. Spectre had no official identity, no fingerprints, no traceable history. But he had one thing that made him the most dangerous digital thief in America, a face identical to Keanu Reeves. Every attempt to capture Spectre had failed. Each time he slipped away, leaving behind digital chaos, stolen data, and encrypted trails that taunted law enforcement. Finally, a breakthrough came. A blurry security feed from a warehouse where the cyber attack had originated. The face, though pixelated, was unmistakable. It was Keanu, or someone who looked exactly like him. From that moment, a nationwide alert was issued. Detective Marlowe had been assigned to lead the manhunt, not because she wanted this case, but because she was the only one fearless and meticulous enough to handle it. Known for her integrity and razor-sharp instincts, she trusted evidence, and the evidence pointed straight toward Keanu. Still, something about the case bothered her. It felt too perfect, too clean, as if someone wanted the trail to lead exactly here. Inside the surveillance van parked near the New York market earlier that evening, agents sat hunched over monitors showing live drone footage, facial recognition scans, and tracking sensors. Keanu's every move was analyzed in real time. The system logged his steps, posture, and gestures, matching them to the Spectre footage with alarming accuracy. Match confirmed. 96%, one analyst muttered. Proceed to phase echo, another replied. Detective Marlowe watched silently, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. She wasn't comfortable with this. Keanu Reeves was a public figure, an icon even. To arrest him in the middle of a crowded market was a bold move that would ignite a media firestorm. But orders were orders. She leaned closer to the screen, showing Keanu sipping tea at the stall. He seemed calm, unaware, almost too normal. "Does this look like a man who just stole classified data from a federal server?" she whispered to herself. Her second-in-command, Agent Klein, stepped beside her. "Criminals hide in plain sight. Besides, the face match is nearly perfect." "Nearly," she repeated quietly. That one word echoed in her mind. Still, she couldn't hesitate. The operation had been planned for weeks. Dozens of officers were now moving through the market. Helicopters circled above. Drones hovered just out of sight. The net was closing. She gave the order. "All units, move in. I want him alive and unharmed." The moment Keanu Reeves lifted his head and saw the officers moving toward him, time seemed to slow in a way he had only experienced during action scenes on film sets. But this was no movie. This was real, sharp, overwhelming. The sounds of the market, chatter, laughter, sizzling grills, all blurred into a distant hum as adrenaline surged through him. Detective Marlowe pushed through the crowd with powerful, confident strides. Her voice boomed across the market again. "Keanu Reeves, NYPD, put your hands where I can see them," people gasped. Vendors stopped working. Phones rose like a sea of glowing rectangles as everyone began recording. Within seconds, the world had turned into a live news event. Some whispered in excitement. "Is this a movie scene? No, look at his face. It's real. Keanu arrested? Why?" Keanu's heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his composure. He wasn't a man who panicked easily. Slowly, he raised both hands, the paper cup of mint tea, slipping from his grasp and splashing onto the pavement below. Steam rose from the spilled tea like a soft ghost, disappearing between his shoes. "Officer," Keanu said, voice steady but confused. "There must be a mistake." Detective Marlowe reached him first, her eyes cold, unreadable. She wasn't intimidated by who he was. She had long learned that fame didn't excuse crime, or so she believed. "There's no mistake," she said firmly. "Turn around, now." Before Keanu could respond, two tactical officers grabbed his wrists. Their gloves were rough against his skin as they twisted his arms behind his back and snapped metallic cuffs around them. Flashbulbs from phones lit the scene like fireworks. People shouted in disbelief. "Why are you arresting him?" "He didn't do anything." "This is Keanu Reeves." Keanu remained calm, breathing slow and controlled. But inside, his mind raced. What was going on? Why him? Why here? He searched for answers but found none. As the officers began to lead him away, he looked directly at Detective Marlowe. "What am I being charged with?" Her jaw tightened. "You know exactly what you did." Keanu's confusion deepened. He had no idea what she was talking about. Two SWAT trucks pulled up, blocking the exits. Helicopters buzzed overhead. The entire market was effectively sealed. Even the smell of street food, grilled kebabs, roasted corn, sweet pastries, seemed to fade under the weight of the unfolding chaos. "No cameras," one officer shouted, but it was already too late. Videos were streaming online within seconds, spreading around the world. Marlowe stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're being taken in connection with the cyber attack on the federal data vault," she said. "Millions of identities were compromised. People died. And we have you caught on surveillance." Keanu stared at her in disbelief. "You've got the wrong man." But Marlowe didn't flinch. "Take him," she ordered. And just like that, Keanu Reeves vanished into... The moment Keanu Reeves was pushed toward the armored police vehicle, the New York market erupted into pure chaos. What had begun as a peaceful, buzzing evening transformed into a storm of confusion, disbelief, and fear. Crowds surged forward, trying to get a better view. Their phones held high, capturing every second from shaky angles and frantic zooms. People murmured in shock. "Why are they treating him like a criminal? This has to be a stunt!" "No way, this is real. Look at all the cops." Someone live-streamed the entire scene to millions within minutes. Comments poured in from across the world, flooding social media. "Free Keanu." "What's happening?" "Is he guilty?" Tell me this is a movie. This looks serious. What did he do? The police struggled to control the crowd. Barriers were set up. Officers shouted commands. Mothers pulled their children close, dragging them away from the commotion. Vendors shut down their stalls, metal shutters crashing loudly as they hurried to protect their stores from the chaos. But amidst the civilian panic, Detective Marlowe remained focused. Her face stayed hard, controlled, unreadable. She ordered the tactical units to secure the perimeter, her voice echoing through her earpiece. Alpha Team, hold the north exit. Bravo Team, clear the central lane. I don't want anyone interfering. Keanu, handcuffed and surrounded by armed officers, tried once more to speak. You're making a mistake, he said, breath heavy but calm. I haven't hacked anything. I haven't hurt anyone. Marlowe didn't look at him. Save it for the interrogation room. As she turned away, a wave of journalists and vloggers appeared as if from nowhere, pushing through the crowd like a swarm of hungry bees. Microphones stretched forward. Cameras flashed. The noise became deafening. Keanu, what did you do? Are the charges real? Keanu, did you commit the cyber attack? Sir, are you innocent? Keanu's head spun from the barrage of questions, but he couldn't answer. His voice would be drowned in the madness. Even worse, anything he said could be twisted in seconds. A teenage boy, frantic and emotional, shouted over the crowd. He didn't do anything! He's Keanu! Leave him alone! Others joined him, their voices rising in frustration. Tensions escalated. People pushed against the police lines. Officers braced themselves, hands on batons, ready to act if needed. Get back! Everyone step back! An officer yelled. The smell of hot asphalt and sweat mixed with fear and uncertainty. Helicopters hovered so low the wind whipped through the market, scattering napkins, receipts, and dust everywhere. Marlowe finally met Keanu's eyes for a brief moment. And for the first time, something flickered inside her. Doubt, not much, but enough to sting her conscience. Was this too much? Too public? Too extreme? But orders were orders. Move him out now! With that, Keanu was rushed into the armored van. The armored van rumbled through the underground. Entrance of the NYPD's classified detention facility, a place reserved for the most dangerous suspects. Concrete walls rose like cliffs on either side, illuminated by cold, bluish security lights. The sound of heavy metal gates opening echoed like thunder, each clang reminding Keanu that he was entering a world far colder than any film set, far harsher than any role he had ever played. Inside the van, handcuffed and sitting alone, he tried to steady his breathing. Everything felt surreal. One moment he was enjoying tea in the evening market. The next he was accused of cyber-terrorism. His mind raced with questions, all unanswered. The vehicle stopped. The back doors swung open, and the blinding white light of the underground facility hit him like a punch. Two heavily armed officers grabbed his arms, leading him down a long, sterile hallway. Surveillance cameras followed their every step. The air was freezing, smelling faintly of metal and disinfectant. They finally arrived at a steel door marked Interrogation Room 3. It slid open with a mechanical hiss. Inside, a single table sat beneath a cone of harsh overhead light. The rest of the room was swallowed in shadow. A chair waited ominously on one side, while the other remained empty, reserved for whoever would question him. Keanu sat down, his cuffed hands resting on the cold surface. Moments later, the door opened again. Detective Marlowe entered. Her boots echoed sharply as she walked in with deliberate steps, her expression unreadable. She set a thick case file on the table and then stood silently, studying him. A strange heaviness hung in the air, a mixture of suspicion, tension, and something she wasn't willing to admit yet, uncertainty. Mr. Reeves, she began, her tone firm. You are being interrogated in connection with a federal cyber attack that resulted in deaths, financial losses, and a breach of national security. Keanu met her gaze calmly. Detective, I don't know anything about a cyber attack. I don't even know how I'm involved. Marlowe opened the file, revealing photos, blurry surveillance, stills of a man working on a laptop in a warehouse. The figure's posture, face shape, and profile were nearly identical to Keanu's. This is you, she said. That's not me, Keanu replied firmly. Marlowe slammed the file shut, frustration flickering across her features. You expect me to believe your face? Appears at the scene of a federal crime by coincidence. I expect you to believe the truth, Keanu said evenly. Someone's framing me. She leaned back, crossing her arms. Then explain why Spectre, the hacker responsible, looks exactly like you. Keanu shook his head. I don't know, but I promise you, I am not who you think I am. A long silence followed. Marlowe studied him, really studied him this time. His calmness, his steady voice, the sincerity in his eyes. Something didn't match the profile of a cold-blooded digital criminal. Hours passed inside the interrogation facility, though time felt distorted, stretching, twisting, losing meaning. Keanu sat alone in a holding room, the walls dull gray, the ceiling humming with quiet electricity. His wrists were sore from the cuffs. His mind burned with confusion. Every breath he took felt heavier than the last. How could this be happening? Who was this man that looked exactly like him? And why was he being blamed for a crime he didn't even understand? Meanwhile, in the surveillance control center of the facility, Detective Marlowe paced, angrily between screens as agents, reviewed footage of the cyber attack again and again. Her instincts gnawed at her. Something wasn't fitting. Keanu's reactions were too genuine, too human, too innocent. But the evidence was damning. Agent Klein zoomed in on a crucial frame. A man sitting in a warehouse surrounded by servers, typing furiously on a glowing keyboard. The camera was blurry, but the outline, the posture, the hair, the jawline, it was identical to Keanu. Facial recognition is matching 98%, Klein said. There's no one else with this close a match. Marlowe frowned. 98 is not 100. Klein scoffed. Come on. There's no such thing as a perfect match in field footage. This is him. But Marlowe felt that familiar tug in her gut. The instinct that had saved her career more than once. Run a deeper analysis, she ordered. Check gait pattern, check micro-expressions, thermal signatures, anything. As the agents reluctantly began reprocessing the footage, Marlowe left the room and walked down the hallway toward Keanu's cell. She stopped at the door window and watched him quietly. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't pretending. He looked defeated. A man guilty of such a devastating attack would be calculating, aggressive, manipulative. But Keanu? He looked like someone caught in a nightmare he couldn't make sense of. She sighed deeply and returned to the analysis room just as a technician shouted, "Detective, you need to see this." Marlowe rushed over. On the screen was a comparison overlay. Keanu in the interrogation room, and the suspect, Spectre, in the warehouse. At first glance, they looked like the same man, but the deeper scan revealed differences, subtle ones. Micro-expressions that didn't match Keanu's emotional range. A tiny scar near the left ear on the suspect. A slightly different walking pattern. Heat signatures showing an older injury on the suspect's shoulder. Something. Keanu didn't have this. This isn't the same person, the technician whispered. A chill ran through the room. Marlowe's heart dropped into her stomach. She felt a mix of relief and dread. Someone created a double, she murmured. A look-alike, or a mimic. Klein shook his head stubbornly. That doesn't change anything. Public already believes he's guilty. Media is exploding. But Marlowe wasn't listening anymore. For the first time, the truth stood before her. Undeniable, terrifying. Detective Marlowe stood frozen in the dim glow of the analysis screens. The truth was clear, undeniably clear. Keanu Reeves was innocent. The real hacker, Spectre, wasn't just a look-alike. He was a manufactured twin, a ghost wearing Keanu's face. Someone somewhere had orchestrated the perfect setup, and she had fallen for it. The weight of that realization pressed against her chest like a stone. She replayed the arrest in her mind. The shouting crowd, the flashing lights, Keanu's calm but confused eyes. She had dragged an innocent man through hell, and worse, the system was now ready to destroy him. She rushed through the steel corridors toward the holding floor, her boots echoing sharply, her breath fogged in the cold air. Every step fueled her urgency, her guilt, her determination to fix her mistake. She would tell her superiors. She would present the evidence. She would clear Keanu's name. But when she entered the upper command office, everything collapsed. Her superior, Commander Briggs, was standing with a group of federal agents she didn't recognize. Men in dark suits, Stern expressions, silent stares that warned of power far above her clearance. Briggs looked at her with a cold, forced smile. "Detective Marlowe, just in time." She held up the tablet with the new comparison analysis. "Sir, we have new evidence. Keanu Reeves is not the hacker. The real suspect is a—" Briggs cut her off. "We already know." Her blood ran cold. "You know?" The man in the center, a tall agent with silver hair and a voice like gravel, and stepped forward. "Detective, some situations require sacrifice. Public confidence, national security, political pressure. We're working with sensitive operations here." Marlowe stared at him, horrified. "You're going to keep an innocent man locked up?" "Not locked up," Briggs corrected. "Transferred. Classified detention. Maximum security." "No," she snapped. "You can't do that." "He's innocent." The silver-haired agent leaned closer, his voice low like a threat wrapped in calmness. "Detective, we need a face to blame. The real Spectre has resources we can't touch. Reeves is convenient." Convenient. The word made her sick. She clenched her fists. "I won't be part of this." Briggs sighed and tapped a folder on his desk. "An internal disciplinary report with her name on it." "You already are." Her heart sank. "You will say nothing," Briggs continued. "This comes from above your pay grade. Reeves will be processed as scheduled. 6 years in the death block rotation. Case closed." Marlowe felt the room close around her. This wasn't justice. This wasn't law enforcement. This was a cover-up. She looked at Briggs, then the silver-haired agent, then the others. Their expressions were blank, controlled, chosen. This was larger than her. Larger than the NYPD. Larger than anything she had imagined. Slowly, painfully, she realized she had two choices: accept the order, or break the system. The door to Death Cell Block C slammed shut behind Keanu Reeves with a metallic thunder that echoed through the underground, chamber like the closing of a tomb. The air was thick, almost tangible, heavy with the scent of rust, sweat, and something darker that clung to the cold concrete walls. 6 years. That was the number carved into his sentence. The number that would define every breath he took inside this place. 6 years to survive a cage designed for men who weren't meant to leave alive. His cell was small, barely. Room for the narrow cot and rusted toilet, shoved into a corner. But the worst part was the silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that felt like it waited for him to break, and yet it was never truly quiet. Every night brought whispers, voices slipping through the cracks, drifting like ghosts from cell to cell. Some were prayers, others curses, and some weren't human at all. Keanu didn't know if they were real or if the darkness of the place had started creeping inside his mind. The inmates here were nothing like the men in normal cells. These were the forgotten, the condemned, the ones who waited for the midnight knock that signaled the end. Some had accepted their fate. Others had gone mad, and a few hunted the weak to pass the time. Keanu felt eyes on him during his first night. A group of inmates across the hall watched him like wolves, studying a new animal in the forest. One of them, a massive bald man with tattoos, crawling across his chest, grinned every time Keanu looked up. Another dragged metal across the bars slowly, creating a sound that scraped at Keanu's nerves. Every day was a test. Breakfast trays slid through a slot. Some inmates fought over them. Others used them as weapons. Keanu learned quickly to keep his back to the wall, to listen for footsteps, to always know who was behind him. Even in the darkness, his instincts sharpened. He wasn't just an actor now. He was prey trying not to become a story whispered by others. The guards only made things worse. They treated the block like a jungle. They laughed when fights broke out, bet on outcomes, and ignored screams. At night, when the lights flickered, Keanu heard the electric hum of the execution chamber down the hall, an unspoken reminder. No one in Death Cell C was safe, not from others, not from guards, and not from the ticking clock that marched toward their scheduled fate. But Keanu refused to surrender. Every day he forced himself to breathe, to think, to stay human in a place designed to turn men into broken shadows. He remembered moments of his life, his films, his quiet kindnesses, the people he loved. Those memories became armor, thin but precious. They kept him from slipping into the darkness that swallowed others. The cell tried to break him. The years ahead promised pain. But Keanu whispered to himself, I will survive. I will walk out of here alive. And deep in the darkness, someone whispered back. The 9th month of Keanu's sentence brought a shift, one so subtle at first that he didn't recognize it. But the death cell had its own rhythm, its own pulse, and anyone who wanted to survive had to learn to feel the tremors beneath the surface. Something was changing, something dangerous. It started with the whispers. They no longer drifted randomly through the halls like before. Now they carried purpose, names, times, warnings, a coded language of survival and betrayal. Keanu listened carefully, pretending to sleep as voices crept through the darkness. New plan tonight. Cell 4 first. A guard on the inside. Paid. He didn't know what the plan was, but every instinct screamed that it involved him. The inmates who had stared at him like predators now watched with calculation. The tattooed giant, Razor, no longer grinned. Instead, he studied Keanu with cold intelligence, as if deciding something. Another inmate, a thin man with trembling hands, avoided making eye contact altogether, as if he feared being caught near Keanu. During lunch, Razor stepped close enough for Keanu to feel the heat of his breath. You're not supposed to be here. Movie star, he whispered without looking at him. Keanu kept his voice calm. None of us are supposed to be here. Razor's lips curled into a humorless smile. Maybe, but you're special. Someone wants you gone before the 6 years are up. That night, the lights flickered 3 times, an unusual pattern. The guards didn't react. They rarely did. But the inmates did. They shifted, straightened, prepared. Keanu felt the temperature in the air drop as though the cell block itself was holding its breath. Then came the footsteps. Not rushed, not loud. Slow, steady, deliberate. The kind that made the hairs on Keanu's neck rise. A guard appeared, Officer Madden, the one with dead eyes and a hatred for everyone in the block. He carried a baton and a key ring that jingled softly. He stopped outside Keanu's cell. Keanu rose slowly, his muscles coiled. Reeves, Madden said, voice deep with authority. You're wanted for questioning. Step out. But this wasn't procedure. Questioning didn't happen at midnight. Questioning didn't involve guards coming alone. Questioning didn't make inmates edge closer to their bars, waiting to see what would unfold. Keanu stayed still. By who? Madden smirked. By the same people who put you here. That was enough. The whispers, the stares, the coded plans. This was it. A setup. A midnight execution disguised as protocol. The moment Madden unlocked the door, Keanu moved. Not to attack, but to slip past him into the corridor. Razor suddenly slammed his massive body against his own cell door, causing a thunderous noise that distracted the guard. Other inmates banged on their bars, creating chaos. Keanu realized in that instant they weren't helping the guard with the plan. They were helping him. Razor growled, "Run, Keanu, now!" The corridor beyond Death Cell Block C was a maze of steel doors, flickering lights and echoing alarms. Keanu could barely hear his own footsteps over the chaos erupting behind him. Razor's voice still echoed in his mind. "Run, Keanu, now!" A command, a warning, and perhaps the last act of rebellion from a man doomed to stay behind. Keanu sprinted forward, guided only by instinct and the desperate hope that somewhere in this labyrinth was a way out. The facility wasn't designed for escape. It was built like a fortress, a tomb for the condemned. But the chaos created by the inmates was spreading like wildfire. Fights broke out in every direction. Guards rushed toward the cell block, leaving corridors unprotected. Smoke from tear gas drifted through the vents, making visibility worse and time precious. At the end of the hallway, Keanu found a junction, left toward administrative offices, right toward the underground transit area used for prisoner transfers. He knew the guards would expect him to run upward, toward the offices, where escape seemed logical. So he went right, deeper into the belly of the prison. The hum of machinery grew louder as he approached the transit sector. It was colder here, the air filled with metallic echoes and the rumble of distant generators. Keanu pressed himself against the wall as 2 guards rushed past, heading toward the alarm. They didn't look back. They didn't expect anyone from Death Cell C to be bold or alive enough to reach this far. He continued down the ramp, breath burning in his chest, until he reached a massive steel door marked, "Transfer Dock, authorized personnel only." The keypad glowed faintly. Locked. Keanu stepped back, mind racing. He wasn't a hacker. He wasn't a soldier. But he had something else. Years of discipline, calm under pressure, and an actor's ability to observe tiny details others missed. He scanned the wall, the floor, the ceiling. Then he saw it. A maintenance panel, slightly open as if someone had worked on it recently. Inside, wires ran in every direction, but one was loose, hanging at an odd angle. A fail-safe bypass. If he could trigger the power cut, he grabbed the wire, twisted it, and sparks jumped. The entire dock plunged into momentary darkness. A second later, the steel door clicked. It unlocked. Keanu pushed it open and stepped into a cavernous loading bay. Empty transport vans lined the far side. Their engines cold, but their keys hanging on a wall rack meant for morning guards. He grabbed the closest key and climbed into a van. His hands shook as he started the engine. The roar felt like victory, but it was short-lived. Red and blue lights exploded behind him. A voice boomed through a megaphone. "Keanu Reeves! Stop the vehicle now!" It was her, the black, heavy-set police officer who arrested him in the New York market. The woman whose false report began his nightmare. Her silhouette appeared through the flashing lights, gun drawn, determination carved across her face.